They just need to try harder. If only they would apply themselves. Does this sound familiar? Before you label your child as lazy, let's take a closer look. What might look like laziness could actually be a learning challenge. I'm here to help you understand the difference. Every week I talk to parents who say things like, "My child is really smart, but they just won't do the work." The teacher says they're capable, but they're just not motivated. I'm starting to think that they're just lazy. Here's the truth. Genuine laziness in children is actually pretty rare. Most kids want to do well. They want to please the adults around them. So when a bright child avoids tasks or consistently struggles, there's usually something deeper happening. I've spent years working with children who've been labelled as lazy, unmotivated, disengaged, or not applying themselves. In nearly every case, once we dig a little deeper, we find out that they actually aren't lazy. They're often battling a learning difference that hasn't yet been understood or supported, or that they themselves are unaware of. So today I'm going to share 5 key ways to tell the difference between motivation issues and a true learning challenge. Let's start with sign number 1. Inconsistent performance despite the effort. A child who is truly lazy tends to underperform across the board and doesn't seem too bothered by it. They put in the minimal effort most of the time. But when a child has a learning challenge, things look a little different. You might see them excel in some areas and struggle significantly in others. They may work incredibly hard on tasks but see little progress. They're often mentally exhausted and after assignments that seem so simple to others. One day might be great and the next day a total disaster with exactly the same material. You might see a child who can verbally explain complex ideas but can't get them on paper no matter how hard they try. The second thing to look for is specific task avoidance. If it's laziness, the child will avoid work altogether, especially anything that seems challenging. But with a learning challenge, the avoidance is usually very specific. They might be happy to listen to audiobooks but panic when they're asked to read aloud. They might love talking through a story but shut down when they're asked to write it down. Or they might struggle with maths worksheets but can explain real life problems really easily. It's not because they don't want to try. It's because those specific tasks are genuinely hard for their brain. The third sign to notice is emotional reactions to struggle. A child who's usually unmotivated tends to be indifferent about underperforming, but a child with a learning challenge often experiences intense emotional responses. You might see meltdowns over homework, hear them say things like, "I'm dumb," or "I hate school," or notice that they get anxious before certain tasks. They might show frustration that seems out of proportion, or they may become perfectionists in areas where they do feel capable because they're trying to balance the shame they feel elsewhere. The fourth sign you may see is they light up with the right kind of help and support when they connect with someone. When it's laziness, offering support or changing your approach doesn't make much of a difference. But when it's a learning challenge, you often see a completely different child when the right support is in place. They love one-on-one attention. They make progress when tasks are broken down into smaller steps. They might completely transform when they're allowed to type on a keyboard or an iPad, or instead of handwriting. You'll see their strengths start to shine through when they're supported in ways that match how their brain works. And the fifth sign, their relationship with success. A lazy child may not be that fussed about achieving, but a child with a learning difference, they want to desperately succeed. They might try all sorts of ways to improve on their own. They compare themselves to their classmates and just feel frustrated. They work really hard in the areas where they do well and light up when they get praise or recognition. These kids often have big dreams, but they feel really stuck. Let me give you a real world example. I recently worked with a 10-year-old boy who was constantly avoiding his reading homework. Everyone thought he just couldn't be bothered, but after a closer look, we discovered he was reading well below his grade level, not because he couldn't read, but because his dyslexic traits made it difficult for him to understand the written tasks. He was spending over 2 hours a night on a 20-minute task and using every avoidance trick he could because that 20-minute task was mentally and emotionally exhausting for him. Not understanding what the instructions that you read, it makes it really difficult. However, when we introduced the right support, his motivation issues disappeared. He wanted to succeed all along, he just didn't know how. This is really important because here in New Zealand, 15 to 20% of students have a learning difference. That's 3 to 4 kids in every classroom. If we keep calling them lazy, we miss the opportunity to give them what they truly need, support that's designed for how their brain works. So, what can you do? Firstly, stop using that word lazy. It's not just unhelpful, it's actually really harmful. Start documenting. What are you seeing? What are the patterns you notice? When do they struggle? When do they see? When are they motivated? Talk to your child's teacher and ask for their observations. Compare some notes. If you suspect a learning difference, consider requesting an assessment through the school or privately. Most importantly, focus on the effort. Celebrate it, guide it, support it. Most children want to do well, and if they're not, it's our job to understand why and support them in a way that helps them succeed. They don't need criticism, they need to feel understood. Thank you so much for being here today. If this video helped shift your thinking, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for some more support and strategies, and please share it with another parent or educator who needs to hear anything like this. Or drop your questions in the comments. I'd love to know what you're noticing with your child's learning journey.